I was there 14 years.
I know you had it for a long time. And even before you had it, you was there, yeah.
Well, the important thing to me that happened in the glory hole and the bear hole was when Tom took, what was the dad's name?
John Young?
John, I said Todd. John met me up there in Camas. I'd talked to him where he lived down south of Manti. Went to his home. And I talked him into coming up. And I said, I'll give you $100 or $200, anything you want for making the trip, and some gas money. So he said, okay. He come up and he showed me 3 different places. And one of them places is the place that Gary Holt's been trying to get me to disclose to him. And that is where you went down a shaft and into an area that took you to the treasure. And I've never disclosed that to anybody.
Yeah, don't tell us.
You know, and it's simple, and that's why nobody's can find it. John took me up and pointed right exactly. He says, you go down right there. Like I say, that was one of those 3 places. And one of those 3 places was not in the glory hole or the bear hole.
Oh.
What you have to remember is when John Young and his son went up, John told his son to go up to the top of the mountain and just crisscross and come down to see if he could find anything. And he says, I'll go on down. He says, meet me at these trees. So I don't know where they were exactly on that hill, but he says, meet me on these trees, where these trees are. And so John went on down to where he stopped about at the cave entrance down there. And he couldn't see anything. John couldn't. So he just stayed there walking around for a long time. In the meantime, his son came down and he found 3 holes, like the glory hole.
Oh, there's 3 of them.
3 of them. And 2 of them was open, and the 3rd one you could tell, or I could tell looking at it, had been covered. And so that wasn't difficult for me to just, find out right where that covered one was, and the other 2 were above that was still open. One of them was the glory hole. Well, when his son got down close to where he was going to meet John was yelling, trying to get his attention wherever he was, see if he could hear him. And finally he got close enough that he yelled back to his dad, and he said, just stay where you are and I'm walking down. So he walked down to where the cave entrance was. And I think I told you how it got the name of the bear hole.
Yeah, but Chad doesn't know.
Huh?
Chad doesn't know.
Oh, when Gail Rhodes and Steve, what's his last name? Schaefer. They went in the cave and there was a bear hibernating in there. So they got the hell out of there as quick as they could without waking him. And they named it the Bear Hole because of that. Well, when Keith, that's his son's name, when he got down to where he was going to meet him in the trees, John was waiting for him and yelling. And so he said, I want to show you something. So he walked down to where the cave entrance was, but you couldn't see it at that time. It was all covered with a big bush that evidently there's no others around it like it was. Had to have been planted there by the Spaniards if they was in there to cover the entrance. When John called his son over. He said, I want to show you something. And so he took him down, he showed him that. I'm trying to think of the bush that it was a kind of a rare bush up there. Maybe a mulberry bush, I'm not sure. Anyway, I hadn't heard of it before. And he took him down and showed him that bush. And he says, what are you showing me that for? And John said to Keith, he says, well, there's a dark spot behind it. And I went over to look at that dark spot, and there's a hole behind it. You can't see the hole unless you go over to the bush that's covering the entrance and move it. And he said, and there's a hole big enough to crawl in. And so they went in and looked around. And I'm not going to tell you what they found on the inside as far as on your camera. And when they went inside, it looked to John like what he told his son. It looked to me like it's caved in here. And he said, what makes you think that? And he said, well, let's go in. And I guess they had flashlights or means of some kind for light, probably a gas lantern for all I know. But when he got inside, he started showing him some things that indicated that the ceiling had fell in. And the first thing was there was a big rock, maybe 20 feet long, maybe around 6 feet high at the deep part, 3 or 4 feet high at the entrance. And it went down at a little slope, but it was a huge rock that had fell from the ceiling. And you could see that by just looking up and fitting the size of the rock in looked like a hole up there or part of the ceiling had caved. And then John started showing him some things. And those things
Yeah, he is. I'll get him just a second.
people have been trying to find out. Well, anyway, when John got in the room with Keith says he went one way and John went the other way, from the big rock. And there was an indication inside that what I seen, that at the end of the rock on the point, that there was a area where it had been cleaned out and there was kind of a rock face on each side, and it was going, I would say, to the northwest inside of the cave. And it went for quite a little distance, but it was real steep. going down in. And that's what Keith said. He's the one that went that direction. And he said it indicated that that area at sometime had been cleaned out. And he continued exploring, and John looked all around everywhere else, and he couldn't see anything that would be beneficial to somebody looking for a mine. The only thing that he indicated was Keith had found that place that went down.
So other than that, it looked like a natural cave or something, huh?
Yeah, but a natural cave, you know, it just depends on how steep it is and what it's made of, but sometimes those cave walls will be self-cleaning. They'll be steep enough. And then we have earthquakes up there. We had an earthquake in, what was it, 1905? And it pretty well shook everything up there. And I don't know how much was of anything major could have been covered up, but I would suppose that if there was a entrance to a mine there, and during that earthquake, it would have shook something up, I would think. It wouldn't stay like it was.
Yeah.
Then Keith and John went outside, and he says, "John, let's go up the hill now, and I want to show you what I found." So Keith took his dad up the hill, and he showed him the first place that had been covered and sealed, you might say. And the second place was the glory hole. And the third place was up higher yet. And he said that the glory hole and the upper one had been sealed, had been open. And he said, I dropped a rock down the first hole, and I would say that it was 50 feet deep, he told his dad, by listening how long it went. And then he said the upper one was going straight down just like the glory hole, but he said it wasn't quite as deep. He said maybe 35 feet in that area. Wasn't quite as deep. I think the glory hole, when they got figuring it and measuring it right off in the beginning, I think they said it was 46 feet deep. John never had any information about the Josephine when he was up there. He was told by an Indian that lived on the Weber Fork coming up, and that Indian worked for some guy that was hauling and cutting wood. Well, John, when he went up there, he got a job with this guy, and there was an Indian there that was working, and he was always helping this Indian. And one day the Indian walked up to John and he says, "You like gold?" And he says, "Yeah, I suppose that'd be nice to have a little." And he pointed up to the mountain. He said, "Right up there." He said, "I'll take you up and show you." I don't think he ever got him up there, but John never mentioned that to me, other than the fact that he told him and pointed up the mountain. And he said, "There's a peak there." And he says, "You can go to it going up the right-hand fork that splits going up, and it'll take you all the way to the top. And so after the summertime, when they didn't need them, and of course they split, I don't know where the Indian went. He didn't seem to mention or know anything about it. But he did then decide to go up and look for this gold that this Indian told him about. And he went up and followed his directions going up, and that's how they found the stuff they found, was following the Indian's directions. He didn't have a map, didn't have nothing.
And they said there was gold up there, though, the Indian.
Huh?
And the Indian said there was gold up there somewhere,
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah, he just told him where to go, and he had a map in his mind. It's pretty easy to follow up there. I don't know as I ever told anybody that full story about why Jim
I don't think
was
I've
up
ever
there
heard that from you before. I don't
looking
think.
for it. Lucky I remember these things. Sometimes I can't remember the names, but anyway, I'd been up there for 14 years, and I'd spent a bunch of money doing core drilling, and I found one place that was really unusual. I was in the glory hole, or no, out of the glory hole, but we was drilling, and I got a mark on the map and measured foot right by the foot where it is, but I think it's a fault because I walked directly north of the fault, and there was an area there where a big bunch of trees are that was solid silver.
Really?
Yeah, from when I used the QED on it.
Really?
My quantum electronic disk.
And did you find the silver when you core drilled?
Huh?
Did you find the silver when you core drilled?
No, I was on my last hole when I drilled that, and we was drilling, and all of a sudden dust started coming out of the glory hole.
Really?
Yeah, indicating there was a pretty damn good opening.
Yeah.
Going from the glory hole east. That's why I figured it was a fault. So me and my boy John went up and took the quantum instrument up, and it gave us a shot immediately up there that was directly in line with the fault going east and west coming up the hill, and this went across right to that fault. Well, the only hole that I put the cameras down in was the one that I thought was a fault, and when we dropped them in, me and Christensen, we dropped them down in, you could see a heavy dark area going back. So I'm sure it was a fault.
And it must tie into the glory hole somehow, because that's the one you got the dust coming out.
Well, it come right into the glory hole going the other direction. We drilled it, and that stuff just bellowed out smoke. So at that time, there had to be a pretty good breeze coming out.
Yeah.
Now, I've been up there when you can stand at the hole and the breeze will go down. And I've been there when the breeze is coming up. So you've got a two-ended system somewhere that would allow that. But it's the other place that Christensen and me dropped the camera down was at the bear hole, above the bear hole, and I followed the fault from the opening up It's real easy to follow right on the surface. Anyway, it takes a little curve right at the bear hole. As you go in it, it goes a little way and then turns this way. And I couldn't find any opening or anything there. There was the one going northwest, but nothing that went up and then turned any significant amount. It just came up and made a little turn right at the face and then went straight up to those trees above the road where that big rock is. And that told a big story about somebody going up there and digging all around that rock and found skulls of people. I asked him about it after I heard that, you know. And I said, "You got any of them skulls?" And he says, "What skulls?" "Up around that big rock." "Oh," he says, "don't pay no attention to that." That's how he answered me. But we went up and checked with metal detectors and both of my 2 boxes, and all I had then was the QED. I didn't have the Locktron that I invented. But we put the camera down in, I'd say 1 or 2 feet off the edge of the road. And then there's a set of trees there where I got some kind of a reading, but it was hard to tell because it was so small. But right where them trees are, there was kind of a little flat area there, and I set a quarter rail down there 200 feet. And further up on the road, about like say about 2 feet off the road, we dropped the camera down it, and it opened up down inside.
You could see a pretty big void, huh?
Yeah, you could see both directions. And there was some area, there was one area going back to the bear hole that when you looked at it, you could see right to a rock that come down, and then it had an area maybe about 3 feet high, and you could crawl under that rock and keep going, which I never did. And you know, you can't crawl down a camera hole.
Yeah.
But anyway, it looked like if anybody had entered that way from another source, they could have done that. And when I put the camera down in the road, and I was putting it right in where I knew the fault was, and then it dropped down in a hole up there too. And it looked like there was a dark area going back to the north right there. One thing I want to caution you about those things, I've seen them that are on camera. I might still have my copy of it somewhere. So it's on S-Video, which was about the best you could get then in a hand video camera.
Yeah.
Anyway, something really got my attention. When I dropped it down that hole just off the road, me and Christians is sitting there watching it, and all of a sudden here comes a big spider walking along the upper part of that where we was filming.
Huh.
He was a good spider. It wasn't a tarantula.
It was big, huh?
But it was big. It had a big leg span on it. And tarantulas, you can tell them. You reach down right down and pick them up. You go down to Mexico, and just off of the state line in Arizona, and at night they come out looking for food, I guess. I don't know what they're doing. They come out by the hundreds.
In Rhodes's notes, he wrote in the bear hole that it went down to 3 rooms going down.
He was trying to translate the document.
Oh, he supposed that's what it was talking about.
Yeah, and it was talking about the glory hole. And you said he was talking about the bear hole?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he tried to translate that and never did get it right. I done the only true translation on it. And in the document, it tells about the shaft, and it said that the shaft goes 206 feet deep and has 3 rooms. Well, if you come up the glory hole, it'll break into 1 room on one side. Did you get in those rooms?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's 3 rooms.
3 rooms, yeah. Small, medium, and large.
Huh?
Small, medium, and large.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about the small, but
Hey, so the story of Rhodes finding the charted course in Professor Rich's deal, was that true?
I don't know if he found one in there.
How did he end up with what he got then? And is that a real one? Accurate?
The charted course?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's real. It doesn't say everything, though. All it tells you in the charted course is that there are 3 rooms in the
mine?
In the mine, in the glory hole. There's 3 rooms in the glory hole going down to the mine. That's all it says,
So
really.
You think that was the entrance, was down the glory hole? How'd they get through that little wormhole?
The wormhole is in the glory hole.
It is in the glory hole, yeah. How'd they get down through that? Just worm their way through, huh?
Well, you remember when me and you were up and I was taking you and Sean up and showing you where Towatts was?
Yes.
And I told you there was a mine right below it?
Yes.
That I found with the Jimmy Reed map?
Yes.
Okay. And when we got over there was still leaves on them branches we was jumping on.
Yeah.
Somebody covered that every year.
Somebody's still watching it, huh?
Yeah, and still watching it. So these places in here, like the wormhole that you're calling, somebody could have been watching it still and going in there and making sure something was covered up. They don't indicate that in the have you read my translation?
No.
I'll have to get that for you.
Is it different? Is it different than Rhodes's translation?
Well, yeah, number 1, he starts waybill. That's a charted course covering the years 1722 to 1814. This charted course pertains to the mine of the Utes, named later, not called later. Named later the Josephine de Martinique, or the Empress. I'm not sure that's how I've got it exactly. This mine can be found west 12 leagues of the river Timpanogos headland and 2 leagues from the mouth of the river Santa Ana to the southeast. Travel 1 league to the south through the land of the Valley of the Grass. He's got things in there that's not there in the thing. Travel 1 league south, which is about 3 miles, to the mouth of the river of the Santa Ana to the southeast. Travel 1 league to the south through the land of the Valley of Grass to a canyon which enters the valley from the east. Follow this canyon east to a peak rounded, not round, but rounded and barren of growth. And from this peak measure 1,600 varas to the northeast, to the mouth of the mine. Now you'd have to go up and measure exactly using 33.5 inches to the varas times 1,600 and measure down and see which hole it hits.
And so you must have done that,
Yeah.
because I remember that's how I met you, because I was writing a thing saying that the Josephine mine can't be up where they say it is, it's got to be someplace else, and you contacted me and said, Terry, you're an idiot, it's where it's right up here.
Did I say that?
Well, you was a little bit nicer than that. You said, let's meet, man, I got to tell you why you're wrong. And you told me, it's right up here.
Well, I wish I'd have kept my mouth shut, and I wish I'd have kept them claims. I could have kept them even though they had covered them up, but I didn't.
Yeah.
Made me so mad, all that money I'd soaked in there. And
How much money did you soak into there? A couple $100,000?
oh, about 130,000, just that one fall. Mining is not cheap.
I remember you was mad.
The mouth of the mine he's got this wrong here. At the mouth of the mine, there is one small bush covering the entrance at the base of a small dark ledge. And the other stuff is, it's not right. The mine of Josephine de Martinique contains 3 tunnels and 1 shaft. 2 tunnels of 400 varas run to the west. That's about 1,200 feet. And 1 tunnel runs to the west. For a distance of 350 varas to the southeast.
Dad, what's good for crew?
The tunnels and the shaft are 1 mine. If I give you, I'll have to find my, I can read it off this. Enter 1 mine to the southeast, 700 feet, May 13th. Can you read what year that was?
No.
Right there, May 13th something.
69 maybe? The 9 might be cut off. And May 17th, 1960 something, and I would say it's 969.
69?
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure who stamped that. Mine don't have a stamp on it.
Oh yeah? And you got yours from the Garcia family?
Yep.
And he got his from Professor Rich? Or do you think
Yeah, I was working on this for quite some time before anybody even knew about it. And of course, that's how Schaefer and Rhodes learned about it. I took Gail down to a restaurant and told him everything. And funny that he didn't find any cannons up there.
You're a firm believer that the Spaniards were up there. They had
Upstairs.
mining, a big mining operation. Has there been any Spanish artifacts or anything found up there? Any tools, any that you know of?
Well, John Young found, it wasn't John that found them, it was LeVar Shirts. As they was going towards the mine from the directions they had, it was just as you make one little turn, kind of, and there was tools there laying that was all rusty. And
inside the mine?
Huh?
Inside?
Inside. And I know John told me LeVar found them, and I think they brought them out. He told me about bringing some stuff out and selling it. But I tell you about the silver he found? Yeah, I did. What LeVar Church found along the way into the mine. Here's something you want to look for. You two, nobody else. They went in. They didn't know what they was looking for.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. When they went in, the very first time, they went down a long kind of a corridor, and it was a pretty good sized corridor.
This down the bear hole?
Yeah.
Okay.
He said that when they went down the bear hole, or down the shaft, it was quite a long one, and going down, he said that there was black rock, that had been stacked all the way on one side of the tunnel, stacked real carefully and stuff. And he said, John said to him, what do you think they've stacked all them rock there for? And he says, I think that the wall is loose and they put that there as support to hold it up. That's what LeVar Shirt said. So John said, don't touch anything then. We don't want anything moving in there, falling down on us. We want to be able to get out, he said. So they kept going, and that's when they got to kind of a Y, and there was a wooden door.
How far in were they, do you think?
To the second door.
To that door, yeah.
Yeah, well, there was two doors.
Oh, they seen two doors?
I told you about the one that Keith laid on. Remember?
That was in that tunnel?
Same tunnel.
Oh.
He laid on that, and he was about 6 feet tall, and this was about 1.5 feet taller. And they had taken timbers and cut them flat on two sides so they could handle them, you know. And then they put them in and sealed it tight on the bottom and tight on the top, and made, I wouldn't call it a door. I just call it some kind of a stockade or something that's saying, hey, we can't go by that or past that. But anyway, he laid against it. This was later, much later than the first time they went in, and had been shown the three places. I think that I said, well, I'll tell you more, but John said, I told him, don't touch that stuff then, we don't want anything caving in on us. And so they continued down the corridor, and there was a kind of a Y there, you might say. And from the indication of John, the Y on the left didn't seem like it went very far. But right at the mouth of that, he says, is where they had an actual door that had been built out of timber. He said it had timber going down into the bottom and to the top, and it was real tight. They'd been pounded in and was real tight, and then they had a big set of hinges on the door, and then it went over, and there was some kind of a hand lock on it, I guess, that you could. But when they got there, there was a chain going all the way from the bottom on the right hand side and going up to the top and wrapped around the pole that was solid and back down, and then it had a big lock on it. And the key that I got from the Garcia family fit that lock. Anyway, when they got there, they couldn't go any further. And LeBar was a little guy. He didn't hardly weigh 100 pounds. He was a little guy, and he could skinny through a lot of places. Well, John was looking around, and he couldn't, all of a sudden he disappeared. And so he said, I started looking for him and yelling for LeBar. And he said, I'm in here. He said, how'd you get in there? And he said, I had to shimmy through that little hole at the bottom of the door. There's a little hole there that I could get through. But he said it was damn tight. And he says, well, did you find anything in there? And he said, yeah, but I don't know what it is. He says, I stumbled over it. I don't know what it is, but it sure as hell is heavy. And he said, well, get your ass out of there and let's figure out how to get this door down. Anyway, he said he felt one of them with his hand. And he said it felt like it had inscriptions in it. So he says they've stamped this for some reason. So after John says, get your ass out of there, he come out, and he come out with both hands first out of that little hole. And told John, pull me out real slow so I don't get caught and get peeled up, get my skin peeled up. Anyway, he told John, I couldn't get one of them bars out and get them up through that hole, and me too. I had to, they'll be there for us. Or he didn't call them a bar. He said, just whatever it is, it's sure heavy. But he did say he felt his hands across it, and it felt like it had something inscribed in it or something. Anyway, it was total pitch black. He had no light back in there, nothing. He couldn't see anything. And I've got a drawing of it. I probably ought to let you look at. Anyway, he come out and got out of there, and he said, how are we going to get in there? Well, I'd have just brought a cordless saw of some kind up, wouldn't you? Cut a hole in that?
They didn't have cordless back then, but yeah, chainsaw.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, I'd have figured out something if I had to take a hand, drill a hole in there, and then use a.
Let me tell you, you just do a bunch of little holes.
Yeah. Then you could take like a hacksaw or something, or a drywall saw, a blade, and go around them holes you drill in it, go right through, and then you could say the Spaniards were here.
You take an axe to it if you.
Anyway, he says, we'll blow the damn door down. And he said, oh, I don't think we ought to do that. He said, if we do that, we're going to cave something in and we'll never be able to get in here and see what's in there. So they come back in a week or two, I don't know how long. And I'll be damned if John didn't bring dynamite with him and blasting cord and all that. And LeVar argued with him for a while. John told him, you know, I don't want to say you're out of here, but you know, you're my partner, but I'm gonna, I found it and I'm gonna do what I want to do. You can picture him saying that, can't you? So he goes up in, and they take, I think he said 3 sticks of dynamite, and he cut them in half or a quarter because of the confined area. Wasn't real a lot of dynamite. Anyway, he found places where he could squeeze the dynamite through. It'll compress, you know, in them things. And I don't know if he knew anything about dynamite, you'd known you can't do that. You put a stick of dynamite in a hole in between timber, what's it going to do?
Blow up, blow.
No, it'll blow, but what'll happen?
Just right.
It'll blow out both ends.
Right.
It's not going to blow a big hole. It's going to go the least back of resistance, and it's just going to shoot that way and this way.
Yeah.
A lot of loud noise and rumbling, you know. But he put one at the bottom, I know, and could have put one at the top. I gotta look through a lot of notes to find that out. Anyway, they set them off and come out, took that cord all the way out up on top of the hill after it had been lit. They took it out and then they lit it on top and then they got the hell out of there. They must have lit it on the way out because they knew how long it would take to blow and how long it would take them to get out. He said they come out and they sit on top of the hill above the entrance. And he says when that damn thing blew, it shook the whole hill. Just shook it. And LeVar said, oh shit, we're in for trouble now. I can just feature him saying that. You stupid bugger, I'd have told him. But anyway, after they let the bad air clear out of it, in fact, I think they even waited a day, if I can remember right. They went in and they couldn't get back in. There was one big rock. But I think it was his son. Yeah, it was. His son was in the Army. And he was quite a tall kid. And he come back. And I don't want him to know about the rock and this kid.
Okay.
His name was Marion. I told you about that town not being named after him, but his name was Marion. He got out of the service and come back, and he was pretty thin. And he told her, John asked him, would you go up there with me and see if you can get back in that mine? And he said, sure. So he took him up and took him to that big rock. And he measured a hole between the top of the rock and the ceiling. and he measured his head and his chest and stuff with sticks, broke them, and put them in there, and he could get them through. So he decides to go over that rock. And I'll be damned if he got maybe halfway through and he got stuck. But he kept working and working and working. He figured he'd just well keep squeezing and ripping skin off himself if he had to get in. And he got through. By then they had flashlights and the things. But he said there was rubble all over the floor from different places, but he said there was one big rock that Dad told us about. And Keith was there when I talked to both of them, Keith and Marion. Anyway, when he got to that rock, he got over it finally, and he went on down and shined the light. He come back out. John was waiting for him at the rock. Come back out, and he told his dad, "You ain't getting in there. That damn door is still there."
Never touched the door, huh?
The one I told you had that and a big chain around it. And, yep.
So you think that Tom's door is behind, farther down the tunnel from that door?
Oh yeah. Not even the same place.
But that door will lead to Tom's door will lead to that door?
That door, when you get by the door, they was doing some smelting in there, I guess. But there was a big ash pit, they called it. And it was a big, big, deep thing. If you fell in it, you'd be done for. Because the Spaniards had been lighting logs and stuff, small, that they had, forget what they call the guys, but they would be carrying these small logs and stuff inside. And they had light all the time in there. But it had black all over, from in there. No, that wasn't even the same place. That don't even relate it to where Tom was going.
Oh, Tom's going a different area.
Yep. Yeah. No reason for him to go there if he was going to the mine.
Yeah. Okay, June. I'm going to keep on looking for that door.
Which one?
Tom's.
Oh, okay.
I think it's a needle in the haystack. I don't know that I'm going to find it.
You won't find what I'm saying is that one that John Young was digging to was not the door.
No.
That door that Tom found, I can never remember his last name.
Beardall.
Birdall, yeah. That door that Tom found was a big door.
Yeah.
This was just a door that John got to, was size of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Small door.
Yeah, I want to find that one of Tom that Tom found. Not that I believe that there really is anything behind it. If there was, that's great. But just because of the craftsmanship that Tom said it was, I want to know if there's really a door like that down there, It just unfathomable to me that they would build some kind of a door like that,
I didn't hear anything about a craftsman. All I heard was the door, and it looked like it had been a handmade door. And then there was a vein that was a wide,
quartz vein or a calcite vein or something.
Yeah, white vein
the side of
that
it.
come right up to it.
Yeah.
It didn't come beyond it. It was behind that wall, and then they had plastered it with probably calcite. Crushed it, and made some kind of a splasher, and they could just barely see these things through that plastered area. Now, what are you talking about? Craftsmanship.
Well, he said that the craftsmanship that made that, he says it was just unbelievable. That it looked something you'd see in these old movies with the dungeons and stuffs in these castles.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's too bad he didn't have a camera and different things. I didn't have a camera for years and years and years. And I finally got to where I could afford one, and I got my camera about the time you got your video camera.
Yep, I remember that.